Talk about some spending. $50 million, in excess of $50 million Australia at a Commonwealth level is spent on these de-radicalisation programs. I was always dubious, an outlier on these issues when they were talked about in the Abbott years. I was never convinced. No one around the world was out there saying that de-radicalisation programs could work. I know you get desperate when you're faced with these returning jihadis and others, and you think, well, let's give it a go. This report today from the Lowy Institute was damning. They're not mentally ill. They're not interested in changing their ways. There's not much repentance at all for their crimes. And the conversion rate, if I can call it that, when they come back from overseas out of Afghanistan was 50% of them returned to Australia and committed terror offences in Australia, of which they earned themselves a conviction. And any surprises there for you?
Not for me, because this is an issue that I'm passionate about and I've followed very closely and written about extensively. But, you know, on the one hand, we've got Christina Keneally pushing the Australian government and saying we've got a moral obligation to take these people back. Not just the families, the jihadi wives and the children, but the foreign fighters, the people who chose to leave the safety of Australia and go join the caliphates that could torture, rape and kill non-believers. I mean, these are people you do not want to have back in the community. And this study, most comprehensive study of its type, completely debunked all those narratives we heard that these people are marginalised, it's mental illness, it's poverty.
That they can somehow be fixed.
It's all these things that you can fix, and then that's the underlying issue that has seen them radicalised. In fact, none of that is true. And if you looked at the cases of the people we are aware of who've committed acts, you could see that. And as far as the de-radicalisation programs, I mean, the spending is not justified by outcomes. Nowhere in the world have the outcomes shown that this is actually a sound thing to be pouring millions of taxpayer dollars into. But it's almost like governments feel obliged to do it. It's just something to say that we've ticked that box. And when you actually listen to the de-radicalisation experts, you become very worried, because quite often they seem to spend most of their time defending the indefensible, trying to explain why these people aren't that bad and how really our society is to blame for where they find themselves. And it is just utter nonsense. We've got to get honest about this. We've been very lucky in this country. We haven't had any major incidents. We've had a number of terror attacks and deaths, but not a big-scale event. But that's only because our security forces have been so successful in getting to them before they're executed. And look, I have to say,
you know, Campbell, you've been a Premier. It's as much good luck, I have to say, as good management when you consider the scale of the problem potentially in Australia. I recounted a story when we were in Singapore one time with a former Prime Minister, meeting a range of authorities that have been doing de-radicalisation in Singapore for a long time, and also serious detention we wouldn't have the guts to do in Australia. And this official said to me, look, we do de-radicalisation because we're hoping down the track we might crack that nut to make it work. But we know it works, and pretty much the only thing we can say does work is detention. But that's not something we want to do here. So this won't make the debate about bringing them home easier for Christina Keneally, because if you can't just whack them in a program that fixes them, what do you do with them?
Well, look, Senator Keneally's position on this is laid bare by the Lowy report. You know, any thinking person already would have had serious concerns, but this really just presents some really solid evidence about how misguided it would be to take these people back. You know, my view is they were told very clearly, the government made it very clear at the time that, you know, they were committing an offence just by going and participating, let alone what they got up to, the things they were associated with, that Rita was just talking about, the horrific war crimes they committed. So we shouldn't take them back. And I have an element of sympathy for young women who may have gone and, you know, been sucked in some way, but that would have to be, but hear me out. That would be assessed on a case-by-case basis. And frankly, even so, if they're allowed back in, I'd have a GPS bracelet on them for the next 10 years.
They knew what they were signing
No,
up to.
thanks.
The children, I have sympathy for, Peter, because the children are innocent, though still quite a sizable number of Australians don't want the children back either. But the women who chose to go there and become part of that evil, I'm sorry,
And
they
they
made their
knew
choice.
they were going as part of a breeding program to breed the children of the caliphate.
Islamic State were very clear about their atrocities. They were proud of them. They advertised them. They used them as a recruiting tool, the torture, the rapes, the murders. And these people saw that and wanted to be part of it and left Australia to go and join that. Sorry, that's it. You don't get to
I've
come
run out
back.
of time,